I think when it comes to testosterone, you want to get the optimal benefits of testosterone, and testosterone will continue to become more optimal for you until you take too much. There's not a lot that's changed in injectable dosing for testosterone in the last few years. It's just...
All right, so let's say now somebody starts testosterone. I want to get your take on optimal frequency of shots, dosing, SIP versus ananthate or whatever. It seems like universally, say everyone just gets prescribed 200 milligrams, but that can't be that every single person needs 200 milligrams, right?
Yeah, it would be like saying everyone needs to eat 2,500 calories and 200 grams of protein. It's like it puts most people in a ballpark.
Yeah,
but it's not right. So the thing that blew me away at the Olympia, like I've been in an echo chamber for a long time of people who are really good at this. So I was blown away going to the Olympia where we were educating on like the basics around frequency and dose titration, and this was like mind-blowing to people, and I was like, you shouldn't be practicing this. Like, this is the fucking basics. So it was this stuff was really... There's not a lot that's changed in injectable dosing for testosterone in the last few years. It's just people aren't picking up what we're putting down, I guess. So when it comes to... So over here, you guys mainly have 200 milligram per mil. In Australia and Europe, we have 250 milligram per mil.
Okay.
And yeah, a typical starting dose for a lot of these clinics is like between like 0.5 mil to 1 mil a week. And this creates a bunch of problems. So the number one thing we have to do is dose it frequently. And this is the thing where, again, it's really simple, but the smaller the needle, the more comfortable it is to inject more frequently. So that's also a limiting factor, is if you're doing a big 1 mil shot once a week, I'm not saying to do that 3 times a week. No one's going to do that long term. So tiny little baby insulin syringes, like 27 to 29 gauge, 1/2 inch insulin syringe, a bit bigger than the tiny little ones people do peptides with, but a bit longer so that the needle can hit the muscle in the shoulder. And if you lean, the ventroglute as well. Minimum twice a week. 3 times a week if you want to be optimal. I've seen bloods for
So
people.
you don't like sub-Q for test?
I don't mind sub-Q for test if it works for the patient. Client. If it works for the individual doing it, I think sub-Q is the best because it's more comfortable.
Okay. Now, how would you know why? How would you know if it works and why?
There's 2 ways you know if it works. One is that if it's not working, if you press the point where you did the injection, you're going to have a thing that looks like a boil. Like it won't be like a cystic acne. It'll be like cystic acne before it bursts.
Okay.
Like a big mosquito bite.
That's just your body's own makeup. It just decides if it's going to work or not.
Yeah, so we have a whole bunch of observations and theories. What I've found is that the thinner the oil, the better it absorbs sub-Q, which makes sense. It's kind of like if you put it in sub-Q versus IM, the holes that the oil is going to drain into subcutaneously are smaller. So it means that you're going to get slower release, but if the oil is too thick, your immune system's just going to go, what the fuck is this? It's just going to attack it. So you're not going to get the testosterone in the system, and you're going to get a big, uncomfortable ball.
So how do you get a thinner oil?
What it's made in. So over here, so the reason why in the States sub-Q is more popular is that your standard oil is thinner. In Australia, we have the standard of cottonseed oil. Over here, your standard is either sesame or grapeseed oil, which is much thinner. But the thinnest oil you can get, which is the best, if the pharmacy can compound it, this is what we have at my clinics, is Migliol, which is pharmaceutical grade MCT oil.
Wow.
That stuff is closer to water. So you can draw and inject that so quickly with a tiny syringe.
Really?
And if you want to whack that in subcutaneously, go for it.
And does that work for everybody subcutaneously?
I used to think it did. It works for the majority of people. Some people, they still can't do it.
Okay.
But a whole bunch of people who are contributing to this discussion are buying testosterone from their buddy at the gym, and that's got like extra preservatives and a bunch of stuff in it that they use to offset for the fact it's not sterile. So if it's not pharmaceutical grade, I don't want to hear about it. But yeah, the majority of people I have found can do it sub-Q with a thinner oil. There's still some people, though, that need to go IM. So I tend to, just because I've just done this thousands of times, go, look, let's start with IM because we know that that's going to work 100% of the time.
Right.
And then once you're good, once you're comfortable, once your symptoms have resolved, which is the number one priority, then let's do a trial of sub-Q. Give it 8 weeks, and if you notice after a few weeks and you go, I'm fucking dragging, like I don't feel this, I'm getting bumps and lumps, we can get a blood test and see if the serum is adjusted. But if sub-Q works for the individual, because you're going to be doing this long term, but we want people to inject as often as they will. So for most people, I think that's going to be a 3 times a week shot.
Okay.
What's the most like if people were like, how can I optimize the oblivion out of this? Daily sub-Q injections.
Yeah.
The more frequently you inject, the better, because it's kind of like, we say that cypionate and enanthate, and to answer the question, cypionate's got 1 extra molecule on enanthate. They're basically Coke and Pepsi. They're so similar, but cypionate's a little bit longer in the half-life. So the difference, I would argue, is akin to Coke and Pepsi. It's so negligible that we're talking hours in a multi-day half-life that you're going to be injecting multiple times a week. It's not a big deal. But I'll always pick cypionate if I can pick both, just because, we're going for optimizing if we've got a choice.
Yeah.
And 3 times, like I've seen guys do blood work. So we say to split the injection up twice a week over once a week to prevent the peaks and troughs. I've seen guys peak after 24 hours and then trough at half that level at 72 hours. So on a Monday, they're up here. On a Thursday, they're right down here. That's not the average guy, but there's enough guys that the difference between 2 injections a week and 3 injections a week can be a fucking game changer.
Wow.
And if you go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, as opposed to doing every second day, because if you do every second day, your day is always going to move and you have to keep track of it. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, don't worry about it for the weekend. It's going to have built up so many half-lives banked over that Saturday, Sunday. You're not going to notice on Sunday that you're feeling a dip. And that way you can just keep topped up all week and it's sustainable. Whereas daily, I think daily is the most optimal, but I find that after the course of like years, guys just go, look, 7 injections a week versus 3.
Yeah.
Whereas 2 versus 3, not a big deal. 3 versus 7,
Yeah.
that's becoming invasive. So,
are you not a fan of like a traditional 1 or 1.5 inch, like 25 gauge or something?
not more than once a week.
Yeah.
From a comfort standpoint, no. Like, just from like, if guys are going to be doing this, like if we're talking 120 shots a year for the rest of your life, the smaller the needle, the better.
Yeah.
And because we're only pinning such a small amount of oil, like,
you'd have to be pretty lean to get that in your glute, though. Yeah.
Ventro glute, you have to be pretty lean, pretty good glute development.
Yeah.
But getting 0.2, 0.3, even 0.4 of a mil in just to the deltoid with a 1/2 inch insulin syringe, you'd have to be morbidly obese not to be able to do that.
Yeah. And so if you just alternate delt, it doesn't get too sore doing it 3 times a week?
No, people think you'll get scar tissue. I alternated delts. I even did daily for a while in the delts, but I've been going into delts for I've only just swapped to cream a few months back, but 8 years alternating delts, never had an issue. The problem,
and you said 27 to 29 1/2 inch?
Yeah, 27 if your oil's thicker, 29 if it's thinner.
Okay.
Because you want to use the smallest needle you can. But what people do, and I don't ever make fun of people in these scenarios, because everyone did the same thing, because this is the most foreign thing ever if you haven't done injections. So everyone's allowed to make the same mistakes. But the problem that people are doing is they're going into the exact same spot on the delt, and they're going, there's scar tissue there. There's just oil still dispersing out, so you got to use the whole muscle.
Yeah.
If you just go into the same exact little pinprick, then you're not going to get scar tissue, but yeah, you're going to feel that oil going in there because it's still dispersing out.
Right. You're not a fan of quad ever?
I was a fan of quad till I hit a nerve.
Yeah.
I say it's like playing Minesweeper. There's one mine on the screen, and when people go, "Oh, I think I hit it," you didn't hit a nerve. If you think you hit a nerve, you didn't hit a nerve. But when you hit the nerve, I'll go into quads if I have to, but not after that. It's PTSD for that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So then let's get into dosing, and then I want to talk about anti-estrogens as well. So talk. How does someone figure out the optimal dose? And then someone that I've talked to just says the higher the better. As long as you have no side effects, the higher the better. What's your take on that? And where do you like to see levels? How do they know? I
kind of fall into your friends category a little bit, but within reason. I think some people are. I think the idea of minimal effective dose applies to pharmaceuticals, not bioidentical hormones. I think that's where there needs to be a distinction made. I think when it comes to testosterone, you want to get the optimal benefits of testosterone. And testosterone will continue to become more optimal for you until you take too much, which is going past what your natural set point could be. The nuance to that is, well, where is that line? Because there's not an objective measurement that we can go, oh, you crossed it, we need to back down. And that's where a lot of the discussion comes into play with this. So I think in terms of looking at it strategically, because that's how we need to look at this, we need to go, okay, how do we actually apply this stuff to people? And I think the first thing that you want to do, and because all over the world we use different units, so I'm just going to talk about the reference range as a yardstick. I think what you want to do is aim for about the top of the reference range, give or take, to start with. because that should be about doubling to quadrupling your baseline testosterone levels without getting too aggressive. But the thing is, if you need your levels to be right up at the top of what we'd consider TRT, which is what I do for myself, you don't need to get there straight away.
Okay.
It's like if you said, hey, I've never had coffee before. I want to start drinking coffee. And I go, hey, triple long Mac. Like, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's too much too soon. Now, that might be the perfect coffee for you once you build up to it, but
Yeah.
half shot latte, double shot cappuccino, you can work up to that. So I think starting at about the top of the reference range is a good point, because some guys are really sensitive to it at a receptor level. They go, oh, I want to take the most I can. And they get up to the top of the range and they're like, they're very stimulated from it. Like, they feel good from it. Other guys, you take them to the top of the range, they don't feel anything until you get them to double the top of the range. So
now there's an individual response rate, right? Like, you could have two people, same age, let's say, same scenario, but like one guy does not respond at all to, let's say, 100 milligrams a week, and some guys through the roof at 100 milligrams a week, right?
That's the other thing as well, is you get dose responses as well. So I find that it's about, if we take 10 guys, you'll get one guy who just barely responds to it. Like, that guy needs like 2 mil a week just to get his numbers on the board.
And that's just, it is what it is.
That's liver genetics. We think that they metabolize the ester either not well or too fast, but that's like individual genetic variability.
Okay.
And then you've got the other guys who, like I've got some guys who take like 50 milligrams a week and their levels are super, super high.
Wow.
If you can be either, you want to be the sensitive guy, because it's just, less oil to inject. But 8 out of 10 guys will fall in a pretty fucking similar response number. And that's why I think what we do, the best way, and people can correct me if they think there's a better way, but I think the best way to do it is to assume someone's going to be that 8 out of 10. And then at 8 to 10 weeks, once the levels are built up, because it takes about 8 weeks for them to build up in the body, then you measure the blood and go, are you where you should be? And if they're that 1 in 10 who's in the gutter or through the roof, then you adjust it at that point. But that's what you do, is you basically throw the dart at the dartboard and you go, what would a conservative optimal number be for the average guy? And in my book, I've said that that's about 150 milligrams a week. But that's an easy division of the 250 milligram per mil. So somewhere within like 125 to 150, 160 milligrams per week, depending on other health markers, is a good place to start. And then incrementally titrating up in increments of like 10 to 25 to 30 milligrams a week in periods of 3 to 6 months until we can reach an optimal level for that individual. If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out by the link below.
And what do you, I mean, there's arguments, right, about where it's no longer TRT, it's no longer safe, now you're just doing a cycle.
Yeah. So at what point is tricky to ascertain.
Yeah.
So typically, like if we're going to be using the units picomole per liter, which the free range is like 200 to 600, about a 1500 is the point that myself and a lot of my colleagues agree that we go, look, if you need it to go higher than that, you've got a problem that's not related to testosterone. And I think that that's one of the things that we have to be looking at in this space is going, we're optimizing testosterone levels to make someone healthier. We're not giving them as much test as they can so they can get some kind of dopaminergic, like euphoric feeling from it, because that goes away regardless of the dose. So,
but let me ask you what we started with earlier. You know, when you talked about things like confidence and risk taking, that does go up incrementally up to a certain level, I would assume. Like if you go from your natural levels 300 and we take it up to 1200, I would assume those things are improving along the way.
What tends to happen with that kind of stuff, and this is a really good question, is so like, yes, for the first, particularly like 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on the guy, you get a honeymoon effect where you feel like fucking Giga Chad. You become like Dwayne Johnson in San Andreas movie. Like you just become like, you get that, what we call androgenic, which is that masculinizing effect. That can hit some guys like a freight train. And then when that levels back off, they go, oh, it's not working anymore. And it's going, okay, this was your brain kind of getting hit with it because it was super sensitive to it. And now what we have to look at, and this is the biggest challenge in managing expectations, is going, how do you become confident? And typically competence is what drives confidence. And the reason why a lot of these guys are lacking in the competence to begin with is because they've been hypergonadal for so long that they haven't had the energy and the drive and the skill set to actually build themselves into someone who they should be proud and confident to be. So the real trick with the TRT is putting that foundation in and then encouraging these men over this period as like a healing process to be like, now that we've put the testosterone in the body, now I want you to go out and do a whole bunch of stuff that because that foundation is there, you're going to respond properly. And that's probably a lot of the stuff that you'd probably talk about, which is the things like I encourage them on intense forms of physical training, things like martial arts, things like mindfulness meditation, obviously eating well and all that kind of stuff, but pushing the comfort zone consistently over time and then being proud of being the person who's making the progress and changes that you're making. And I think you have to put the stimulus in on top of the foundation. Otherwise, you get a little bit of that confidence effect, yeah. But probably not the amount that you're hoping to get. And I think guys go, I'm going to push the dose up, and it's going, no, you actually have to push the character up. You have to put the work up, and you have to do it over time. And I think that's where people don't like to hear that, but eventually all the shortcuts lead to dead ends anyway, and then that's the path you're going to be going down.
Yeah. So what's the highest you've taken someone where we could still consider it? Is it 300? Is it 400? There's like mixed camps on that. You know, I saw Mark Bell say, and nothing against Mark. I've been friends with Mark for 20-something years. He said, you know, sometimes you're not going to get anything until you get to 600. No, I don't, you know, like.
Yeah, no, that's there's definitely a line. And like, there's a lot of guys who take 250 a week to get good TRT numbers. When I do injections, I take 250 a week. That gives me a in the units for free, that goes up to about 21, 22. That gives me a 50. And then in the units we use in Australia, it gives me about double the top of the reference range. Once you get past double the top of the reference range, and if the reference range keeps dropping, that might become triple the top of the range in a few years.
What's the current reference range here?
I think
like is 1200 the top?
It's I've seen some which are a bit lower. 1500 used to be the top.
Yeah.
I've seen the top of that range be like 800, 900.
Yeah.
So
so you're saying you can get to double that and you're okay with it?
Plenty of guys need to be double that.
Yeah.
So in Australia, we use nanomole per liter for the range, which is total testosterone. It used to be 13 to 30. Now it's like 5 to 24. And a lot of the time we have to take a guy up to a total of 50, which is 1500 in the units that you're talking here. That, assuming the sex hormone binding globulin's about average, that's about the most we have to take a guy to, and that will typically be about 250 milligrams a week of testosterone. Now, do some guys need 300 to either get those numbers, or maybe they've been on things like finasteride, dutasteride, like hair loss medications, SSRIs. Maybe they've got something going on where they need a little bit more than that. I've seen a couple of guys need to go up to 300. Once you get past 300 milligrams a week of injectable testosterone, I would argue, and I could even speak on behalf of the majority of my colleagues who I would say would agree, is that unless you're the 0.001% outlier, that anything beyond that's not TRT, I would say.
Okay. And what if you are, let's say, you're at 300, like you said, that's the high end, and your test is still not where we wanted to see on blood work. What's going on there?
That they could be a genetic outlier. They could be getting dodgy testosterone from the gym, which is usually what it is.
Okay.
They're not doing the injection properly, so like they could accidentally be doing a sub-Q injection and it's not working for them.
Okay.
That's one of the main issues we see when guys start and things go well, and then over time it falls apart. They just stop sticking that needle all the way into the muscle, and then it doesn't absorb into the muscle properly, so that can cause levels to drop. And
so it just hangs out in the fatty tissue, or what happens to it?
We think that part of the swelling that happens in the fat tissue is the immune system attacking it, and that breaks it down before it makes it into the bloodstream.
Okay.
That's the theory.
Okay. But you're not getting any benefit out of it. Yeah.
So if the numbers don't come up on paper, then we need to put the dose up, but issues with the liver will cause problems because the enanthate and cypionate ester, they have to be cleaved off for that testosterone to become active, and that happens in your liver. So if you're drinking a bunch of alcohol, taking a bunch of over-the-counter painkillers, or doing anything else that's messing up your liver, that could be impacting your ability to metabolize that testosterone.
Okay.
But we're talking like 1 in 100 cases here.
Okay. Anything like any relation to thyroid or anything like that?
Thyroid's a big one. Thyroid is the second hormone system that I specialize in, which I never intended to, but it's because so many guys with hormone issues have thyroid problems. A lot of the time they don't know it. The sluggish thyroid will slow the liver down, and then that can cause issues with not only metabolizing testosterone, but overconversion to estrogen as well. So if you want, kind of like the car again, if you want the optimal engine, you've got to have all the parts supporting the engine be optimal as well. You can't have a sluggish thyroid and optimal testosterone levels, because that would never happen naturally. So if you make that artificially, you're going to get problems.
So how would someone know? Are there symptoms that people could be listening and know, like, oh, that sounds like I have a sluggish, or do you just have to get blood work to know?
It's old school and it's imperfect, but what people can do, if blood testing is expensive or you just can't be fucked getting a blood test, measure your waking temperature. It's fallen out of favor because that used to be the primary way that they would look at hypothyroidism until they could look at the blood tests. But serum blood work for thyroid only came out in, I think, like the 70s or 80s. So up until then, they were using waking temperature. So you get a sublingual thermometer, you stick it under your tongue, and then until it goes beep, and you do it every morning before you get out of bed. So before you take a piss, before you get up, if you get up at different times, totally cool, and you get the average, because it will go like this over 7 days. If we say we want it between 97.8 to 98.2. I'm glad I'm in the States because I always give that in Fahrenheit. So 97.8 to 98.2. If you're a bit below that, that's not an issue. But if you're like waking up consistently in the 96s, it doesn't mean that you have hypothyroidism, but it means that your metabolism is sluggish. And a lot of the time that's because of the thyroid. So waking temperatures is not as good as a blood test, but it's more accessible. So that could be the thing that people start to investigate, to look into, to get labs. But really with thyroid, you want TSH, free T3, free T4, and then the antibodies for Hashimoto's, which is your autoimmune condition against your thyroid. That's ATPO and ATG antibodies. You get all of that together, ideally with your temperatures, and then you see someone who understands the thyroid. And if your thyroid's a bit low, the cool thing with thyroid is you're not deleting the production like you do with TRT. You're just topping it up. So if you can top up that little bit of extra thyroid with what your body's not making, and the signal in your blood will tell you that your body is crying out for more of it, and you guys use Armour Thyroid here, which is like the best thyroid treatment, and it's available very easily. A little bit of extra thyroid, that can be a game changer for some people. Sometimes it can just feel like taking like the perfect energy drink without side effects.
Are there simple things other than taking that? Maybe the person's just not eating enough. Maybe they're overtraining. Maybe they're doing too much cardio. They're not sleeping enough. Could those things be contributing to their temperature being low and the thyroid being kind of...
If you fall into the category of one of those rare individuals who can actually overtrain, then yeah, you can definitely be overtraining. Most people in my field...
Some people do overtrain and not eat enough. You know what I mean? Like they're doing CrossFit and they're drinking coffee all day, not eating enough. So then... those typically be cold.
Definitely. However, sometimes, and this is where it's really important to measure the blood and look at history, sometimes they can be compensating for the hypothyroidism by overdoing it and taking a whole bunch of caffeine because they're trying to stimulate themselves.
Yeah.
So it can be a chicken or the egg thing. But yeah, that can definitely cause it. The big one in the UK where it's like prevalent and in Europe is not getting enough sun. Not an issue here, but sun exposure, not just vitamin D levels, but sun exposure, really important for the thyroid.
Yeah.
Multiple mechanisms, but also just observationally, hypothyroidism is prevalent in countries like the UK because it's dark and they don't go outside. So that one, but yeah, and then also just under eating, under sleeping, over caffeinating. But that's why it's important we look at the blood work, because we can see if you've got autoimmune antibodies, which it will be made worse from these things, but it can't be fixed. Or you've got something like high reverse T3, that's when your body is going, we're putting you into survival mode. So that's when people, that's the blood marker that would make someone do like a reverse diet, which is where you go, hey, your metabolism is slowing down because you're pushing it too hard. You need like a diet break. That's what we do to correct reverse T3.
Right.
Yep. So you can get blood work to show if it's from overtraining or if it's not.
Yeah.
Stop doing all the things you know you shouldn't be doing and start doing all the things you know you should be doing. If people are looking for where to start, it's that. Testosterone is what creates confidence. It's what gives the capacity for leadership. It's what drives the ability for one to become courageous and competent in their skill set. If you go on TRT and then live a lifestyle that you would never have those levels in the first place, your blood's going to get really